Sounds Like Teen Spirit, film from Jamie J. Johnson, produced by Elizabeth Carlson, who isn't here, Stephen Woolley, who is here, and we get the singing nun in here. Gratuitous use, I think, of that particular classic piece of music. My favourite character. I mean, there are so many different cameos in here. It seems unfair to pick one out, especially one who wasn't performing and had nothing really to do with the telling of the story. But I loved the Greek Orthodox priest who turns up. It turns out to love heavy metal, and once we've worked out what he's saying, you think it's Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin. But he's like he's got the full Orthodox gear, he's got the beard, and he's into heavy rock music. No reason why he shouldn't, but it's a great find.
Yeah, I think this was one of the things about, obviously the film is a documentary, but there were things like that I just couldn't have scripted and couldn't have expected to find. And, we're following this girl in Georgia. We go into a church, and suddenly this, as you say, very traditional-looking Orthodox priest starts saying how much he loves heavy metal and rock music, and it starts listing in this sort of broken English in a kind of very sort of Borat way, Sweet, Led Zeppelin. And it's kind of like it was amazing to just see that.
If he'd been in Anvil, the story of Anvil, at that point we'd have gone, no, this is made up. This is absolutely made up. Let's play a little clip of Sounds Like Teen Spirit, just one of the characters.
Well, at the Cyprus final, I thought I was out of tune. Because I was out of tune, if I tried to go back into the tune, I would sound very weird. Then I would show that I did not know how to sing. But at least singing wrong and continuing wrong sounded a bit better than wrong and then right and then wrong and then right again. But I guess in the end it paid off. Because I won.
Just explain a little bit about that story.
So that was Yorgos, who was the Cypriot representative in Junior Eurovision. And when we first saw him on camera, he was just so passionate, and he was just in complete ecstasy that he was winning Junior Eurovision, his national final, and was going to be going on to represent Cyprus. And he's got this little sister who just totally dotes on him. Mm-hmm. And there was a bit when I was filming, and I was behind the camera, and she just so earnestly and so innocently just looked at me and just with complete conviction just said, "It was the happiest day of my life. When I saw my brother won, I've never felt such big happiness in me." And I started getting quite moved, and I was kind of brushing away a little tear, and I looked over at her mum, and who was beside me, and she was also brushing away a little tear. And it's just that kind of innocence that, I was so lucky to sort of find from these kids.
Stephen, why would people choose to go and see this in the cinema? I mean, we have had documentaries coming up, and people do have a taste for these. I mentioned Anvil. I mean, maybe it's in this. I still think it's in the same spirit as Anvil, really, which is a terrific film. But why would people choose this for the Friday night?
I think like Spellbound, it's a great document of the journey that children are prepared to take, and their, as James said, their innocence and their wonder. And when you experience that en masse in a crowded room, 300 people, of course you watch TV, and it's a whole different relationship you have with the material. And I think this film has proven, when we showed it, for instance, in Toronto to a huge audience, that it's a real experience as a cinematic experience, because you do laugh and you do cry and you do emote with these kids, and the music is half of it is cheesy, half of it is actually really good. And it's like saying, why would you go to the cinema to see Spinal Tap, or why would you go to the cinema to see Best in Show? When those laughs come, and there are a lot of laughs in the film, it's very, very funny, some intentional, some unintentional. It's great to enjoy it with an audience, and I think it is a cinema movie.
I think there's a difficult question in terms of what constitutes cinematic. I mean, certainly because of the subject matter of the film, much of it is televisual, because much of it is actually stuff that is being done for television. That's the way it works out, and I think there is an ongoing debate about whether or not, what constitutes something that needs to be in a cinema. If, however, your criteria for whether something should be in a cinema is whether or not you leave the cinema feeling good, I mean, that's the thing that Sounds Like Teen Spirit has. I mean, I saw it actually in a room on my own, and I smiled all the way through it. And it is.
Did you cry?
I did, actually, because it's impossible not... I mean, the fact is, if you've got any heart at all, it's impossible not to look at young kids literally giving it their best, as as the guys say, without cynicism. They're not being funny, they're not being camp, they're not being, arch or ironic. They really want to do their best, and they want to do their best not just for themselves, but for their countries. And there is a sort of sense of the weight that's on their shoulders when they're out there doing it. You think, it is... That, I think, is very moving. I think you'd be very hard-hearted not to get it. But as that clip demonstrated, it's that one when they say things like, I was singing out of tune, but I realised if I went back into tune, it would sound more wrong, so it was better to stay out of tune. And then one part of you thinks, what a funny thing to say. And the other half of you thinks, actually, that's quite logical, as is demonstrated by the fact that he does then actually get a huge round of applause. So I really, really felt good about the film, and I really came out of it feeling good about the world. And it was clear that was, it has a deliberate sense of innocence about it, which I don't think comes across as faux naive, which a lot of that stuff does.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve made the comparison with Spellbound, which is a very, very high bar to hit. But I think that's the sort of high watermark of films about children.
That was the spelling quiz.
It was the spelling quiz, and essentially it was a thriller that just consisted of kids standing up on stage and spelling words, and yet you were white-knuckled with worry that they were going to get... I mean, these are words that I can't spell anyway. These are words that especially me. Yes, that's not going to work. But the thing with Sounds Like Teen Spirit is that it that sense of it being about people wanting to do well, and you're laughing, and at some points you are clearly laughing at the spectacle of Junior Eurovision, but crucially, you're never laughing at the kids. You're never laughing. Occasionally, you're worried for them, and there was times when you see there are shots, for example, of their families watching around the world, watching on television sets with a coat hanger stuck in for the aerial, so and the shots of the parents watching their kids on television doing this stuff, separated by these great distances. I mean, I felt that was really moving and powerful, because if I was one of those parents, I would have wanted to be there, and yet they couldn't be there in the room with their kids to protect them. And I thought that was, that worked really, really well. So as I said, in terms of whether it's visually cinematic, I think there is a debate to be had. In terms of whether you leave the cinema feeling good, I think there is no debate. I think it is a genuine feel-good film.
No, I think a lot of comedies that are successful, and we call them films, actually have very little cinematic or visual
I think that's true.
content.
Yeah,
so what passes as a film, really, for most people, I think, passes as a good time. And this is a movie where you can go and have a really great time. And I think that's really what people look at. I mean, I'm sure when you come to your top 10 movies of the week, there are movies on there which may have cost $200 million, but actually...
And are rubbish.
And they're rubbish, yeah.